Welcome to Speak Your Mind. It's really good having you back on the show. I'm your host, Gwen Magoon. And of course, today the focus of our discussion is on World Maritime Day 2018, which will be observed on the 27th of September, and that's next Thursday. The theme is IMO 70, Our Heritage, Better Shipping for a Better Future. And our conversation this morning will primarily focus on safety of lives at sea. Now, let me just quickly share some statistics from the Fiji Navy, and this was from January this year till to date. There were 47 cases of incidents out at sea with one fatality. Okay, you can also have a look at this table. It'll be on our Speak Your Mind Facebook page. Also, last year, the cost to conduct search and rescue operations by the Fiji Navy was $45,000. So it's time now to introduce our two guests, both who have had very remarkable careers as seafarers before joining MSEF. We've got the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Captain Philip Hill, and also MSEF Manager Qualification and Licensing, Captain Thomas Ikete. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show. And I'm sure at MSEF, Maritime Day is every day. But just to begin, the theme for this year is IMO 70. Maybe you could, tell us, how does this year's theme celebrate Fiji as a maritime nation?
Yeah, well, Ms. Magoon, sorry. The World Maritime Day is celebrated throughout the world. It's an international event organized by the International Maritime Organization. And we are part of the International Maritime Organization as a country. And we celebrate this on the 27th of September for this year. The theme for it, as you mentioned, it's our heritage, better shipping for a better future. And the 70 states that the IMO itself is 70 years old. So they just want to formally acknowledge the existence of IMO and what it has done over the years. Really, the World Maritime Day is there to acknowledge the shipping industry, the stakeholders, and those that are involved in it, taking into account the seafarers, the ship owners, the providers, and the port operators, all those that are part and parcel of the shipping industry. And the main part of this World Maritime Day is a celebration part. We celebrated it to acknowledge the stakeholders of the shipping industry.
That's very interesting, the point you raised, that you're recognizing those who actually work in the shipping sector, because it's often referred to as the invisible industry. And I'm sure, your awareness program, we were looking at it, is very targeted. Maybe you could give us a snapshot of some of the key issues that you'd like to, highlight or promote during this day, during this observance as well.
Yeah, as mentioned, it's first of all, as chairman of the World Maritime Day Committee, I try and relate this fact to the rest of the committee to say that this is a celebration. It's not something that we need to raise something for someone or a particular institution. So it's a celebration to acknowledge the existence of the maritime industry in Fiji. And they have done that throughout the world. And we are very much celebrating that day with the rest of the world too, the maritime world. And for your information, more than, according to the IMO website, they states that more than 80% of all goods are transported by sea transportation. So, as you mentioned, as you said, it's very much non-visible to majority of our natural citizens to state that the maritime industry does exist.
Vital industry, nonetheless.
Yeah, and the World Maritime Day is to acknowledge where they are, what they are doing, and we are doing this in a form of celebration, in a form of an award to highlight what they have, gained throughout the years, or the best in Fiji, not lowering those that didn't attain that certain standard.
And indeed, as we were sharing earlier as well, this country has a very rich maritime history. Okay, just looking at safety on sea, at sea rather. Captain Hill, maybe just to begin, let's look first at the Fiji Register of Ships. How many different domestic vessels, do we have operating in our waters, from large passenger to small fishing boats?
Okay, thank you, Gwen. With the registration of ships, we have the ships above 15 meters. We have about 800 of those that are registered. But it's the one that's below 15 meters which is continuously increasing every day. To date, we have about 2,200 that's registered. And these are from small tourist boats to the open boats that's normally used by islanders for transportation. As we live in a maritime nation, majority of our maritime communities rely on these boats for transportation daily.
And we'll go more into detail about that a little later on the show
Yep.
as well, Captain Hill. But today, as we focus on maritime safety, let's look at some of the major offenses in terms of maritime safety. What were they, and what actions were taken against these perpetrators? Were they just individuals or shipping companies as well?
Okay, the legislation that deals with breaches to the maritime legislation, we have the infringement fines regulation 2014, and we have been issuing infringement notices to those shipping companies and even seafarers that have breached. And the breaches can range from not having the proper documentation for the seafarer, or they are carrying expired certificate of competencies. Like all seafarers, they are issued certificate of competencies or certificate of proficiency, depending on the capacity that they serve on board. These are the certificates that's recognized by the authority and also by any other authority in the world. They recognize certificate of competency. Other infringements may include expired ship's document. With ships, we have survey certificates, minimum manning certificates, even fumigation certificates, safety certificates. There's about 7 certificates that's mandatory to be carried on board. And this for the commercial ships. We're talking about commercial ships. And if any of those certificates are not on board, then that's a breach. Although we may say that a document cannot cause an incident, but if there's an incident and the document is invalid, then that points back to the authority. So we have those, and then, of course, the overloading. The favorite one is overloading, and majority of the overloading cases are to deal with the small boats, our open ponds that travel daily from islands to for example, from Benga to Vitilevu, or from Kandavu, or even from the Lomaiviti group that come into either Levuk or all the way to Natovi and along the coast. We have spot checks put in place where we can pick up these overloading activities, and it's not that we issue same time. We do awareness as well, and our spot checks goes into areas where we have done awareness. So that is some of the breaches that we have and some of the measures that we put in place to minimize those breaches.
Great. We'll also touch, when we come back from the break, we'll also touch with Captain Hill on the penalty, when it comes to overloading. This is Speak Your Mind, and we'll stay with us on the show. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind on FBC TV and also Gold FM. And of course, the conversation today is on World Maritime Day 2018, and this will be marked next Thursday. And the theme is IMO 70, Our Heritage, Better Shipping for a Better Future. And of course, our in-studio guests, we're having a discussion with the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Captain Philip Hill, and also MSEF Manager Qualification and Licensing, Captain Thomas Sikete. Captain Hill, I know this is also an issue that everyone's really interested in to find out about, because we actually see this as well, overloading of boats. So what's the penalty?
Thank you, Gwen. With our penalty infringement regulation, there are various penalties depending on the size of boat and also depending on the breach. For example, a small open boat that has an overloading breach, the immediate fine for that is $150 and $50 per passenger that has been overloaded. In addition, there are other measures that can be put in place, because if it's a continuous breach, then the captain's certificate is on the line. So, in addition to that, could be a suspension to certificate. That will depend on the frequency that the captain breaches the legislation. For the bigger vessels, take for example the size of a roll-on roll-off ferry. If they depart without clearance, then automatically there is a $2,000 fine to the master and a $2,000 fine to the operator. And if there is an overloading incident, then also the initial fine is also higher in the $250 level, and then $150 per passenger that has been overloaded. This is not there as a money-making legislation. It's there to try and send out the importance of life at sea. How if we save one life at sea, that is a big achievement for us. And some of these vessels, they carry the biggest roll-on roll-off ferry that's trading at the moment. It's carrying 1,200 passengers. Imagine if anything happens out at sea with 1,200 passengers. There's a lot of demand on the logistics arrangements and the rescue operation that has to go in place timely to make sure that the 1,200 plus the master and crew are saved. And the preventive measures that's put in place are our enforcement and compliance officers that's located around the key ports, domestic ports, where they check on the ship on overloading, and then they issue the marine clearance. The ship is any commercial ship that operates in Fiji cannot depart without a marine clearance. So, if prior to the issue of marine clearance, we have all these checks, document check, and then make sure the passengers are loaded according to what is there, what they are certified to load, and then all other safety aspects are checked, the cargo, securing, and all that, and then the marine clearance is issued. So that's how some of the infringement fines, the cost, and some measures that we put in place to reduce those infringements.
Captain Hill, would you be able to tell us, just going back to overloading, how many infringement notices or how many small boat owners or even large passenger ship owners have been penalized because of overloading?
To date, we have issued close to 40 infringements, and majority of them have come in to pay for their fines. And at first, it's a shock to them. We always get the excuse that we didn't know that there is an infringement fine, but we have done awareness prior to any legislation coming into force. And you will have that excuse, like anyone, they will try to get out of getting a fine. Similarly, with any car that is stopped on the road for overspeeding, you'll try and negotiate your way. But unfortunately, the law is there. We cannot bend the law. And those fines are given. About 40. But now that we are issuing the fines, the incidents are getting, far in between. Yeah, not like before. We keep issuing fines, but now it has sort of achieved its purpose to put in some preventive measures and some awareness to others that, okay, the authority is there and they are checking.
And how about in the issue of life jackets? How many notices have been issued in this instance where people? I know it's compulsory for them to be wearing it, but they haven't been. So how many small boat owners have been penalized in this regard?
Life jackets, we have not issued any on life jackets, but if they do not carry life jackets on board, we issue them the fine, and that is part of the checks that the marine, the enforcement and compliance officers do prior to the vessel leaving. But when they, before issuing the marine clearance for the small boats, if it's written in the service certificate they should wear the life jacket, then all the life jackets should be worn by the passengers, and then it will be issued the marine clearance. But what they do out at sea, we don't know. They can leave and then they were wearing the life jackets, but out at sea they probably take it off because it's hot but it is important to note that with these small boats, accidents can happen within seconds. And there's no time to look for life jacket and put on a life jacket in a small boat. If it tips over, if it has a collision, you don't have any time to wear life jacket.
We will continue on life jackets when we come back after the break. And of course, joining us on Speak Your Mind is the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Captain Philip Hill, and also MSEF Manager Qualification and Licensing, Captain Tomasi Kete. And we're talking about World Maritime Day 2018, which will be marked next Thursday. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. And of course, we're touching on World Maritime Day 2018. And our conversation this morning focuses on safety of lives out at sea. Captain Hill, just, to continue from where we left off, there was something I saw in terms of the awareness that you're doing for World Maritime Safety Day. And one of the core, messages that you're also driving is weather observation. We have the cyclone season approaching. And even outside of that, I mean, right here at, Gold FM, we're getting weather bulletins as well, advising mariners about rough seas. Yes. How important is this?
This is a very important aspect of any sailor's life or any general public that's traveling out and intending to use maritime transport. As always a rule, it is each individual's responsibility to assess the weather, and if you are traveling, you think that you should not travel, and the boat is going, you have to make your own decision. That's first. Secondly, we all the mariners, they listen out to the weather bulletins, but again, you still have those who know the bad weather is coming, approaching, but they continue to put out to sea. We have had incidences where we had to ask the Fiji Navy to run for small boats that were in trouble at sea. And however, we always stress to seafarers, we put out marine notices. If there is a cyclone approaching or a bad weather approaching, if necessary, we put out marine notices to stop the movements of certain sizes of vessels. We always start with the small boats first. We restrict them from any movements, and if need be, if the cyclone is approaching closer to Fiji, then we will stop the movement of other big vessels. These are the measures that we put in place just in case we have captains or ship operators who still wish to operate during the approach of this bad weather.
Captain Hill, if I could just touch briefly, there's different types of vessels that we have here in Fiji. But your work also extends to recreational vessels. We're talking about tourism. We're looking at rafting and jet skis and kayak. Maybe if you could just, briefly give us a snapshot of some of the safety rules and standards too.
Yeah, thank you. We have regulation with the Maritime Safety Authority. We have two primary legislation, which is the Maritime Transport Act 2013 and the Ship Registration Act 2013. From these two acts, we have 34 subsidiary regulations. So one of the regulations that we have is there to look after the recreational boating and also even jet skis. We have a jet ski regulation. And for jet ski operators, they come under our regulation whereby they have to apply to operate these jet ski operations, and then we go down and demarcate the area where they should operate, and we look at safety aspects like swim zones, whether they're in a navigational channel, and look at their standard operating procedures with regards to safety. All this comes through to MSEF through the application, and then we process it through our safety requirements. And if they pass, then we go down and do a final check, and then we issue them with a certificate to operate. So with all jet ski operators, we do not register all the privately owned jet ski operators, but those operating commercially, we regulate them.
Okay, well, moving away from vessels, but still on safety, let's just look at the crew of a ship, the training of the crew to conduct a safety drill, because they have a role in ensuring the safety of passengers.
Yes.
So what work, or what works are being done in this area?
Okay, with this one, we have continuously have discussions with the ship operators, especially our roll-on, roll-off operators. They have briefings, safety briefings on board prior to departure, and we have occasionally done briefing at the passenger waiting area on how to don life jackets, and even on board. During their safety briefing, the crew show the passengers where life jackets are, and how they will be ordered to vacate ship even if the case arises. Apart from that, there is a requirement for all ships to conduct safety drills monthly, and that is put down, recorded in their logbooks, and we can go on board and check if they are doing their drills. And you can easily find out whether they are doing the drills. We can ask somebody else. We can go down to the chief cook and ask, did you do a drill? And that confirms what is recorded. So that's the way we monitor these drills.
Just speaking about the crew, Captain Kete, interesting, earlier you had spoken about the significant role that the maritime sector plays in employment. But of course, the job that they go to, and both you gentlemen have, experience in this as well as former seafarers, is regarded as one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. And of course, on World Maritime Day 2018, you also want to recognize the men and women who are, part of, who are seafarers. Probably you could just highlight, some of the activities that will be held in recognition of seafarers.
The seafaring industry is an international industry. It's open to anybody, and they operate on international agencies also. In Fiji itself, right now, we have a few recruiting agencies, but they act on behalf of the major shipping companies abroad. I understand in 2012, if I can remember, the remittance that was forwarded by the seafarers then was about $20 million in total. That was for those that they managed to get data from me, and excluding some other seafarers that they are not known. They are out there in the international industry. But just when arranging this World Maritime Day, we noticed that there are more than 50 senior officers out there in the industry, and we are giving the awards for the most senior people who has been masters and chief engineers on big container ships and tankers, and we are highlighting that during this World Maritime Day celebrations. And in terms of remittance, our seafarers on international ships, they are paid quite well compared to the local industry, very well compared to the local industry. And majority of us, when we were seafarers, we more or less send most of our monies back home. And for senior officers, they are getting in the range from $10,000 up to $30,000 a month in Fijian dollars. So that is the amount that our senior seafarers are getting out there in the international seafaring industry. It's only that lately we have lost a couple of shipping companies. That's a bit of drawback. But Papua New Guinea is getting everything from Fiji in terms of seafaring. Most of our local senior officers are all being employed in Papua New Guinea, for your information. They are paying about 4 times as much as what Fiji can, also shipping industry in Fiji can pay, and that is why they are there. And they also have conditions that looks after them well in terms of repatriations and the working condition involved. Right?
Are we looking sort of a brain drain that's happening here in the shipping sector? But we'll answer that question when we come back from the break. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. And of course, we're touching on World Maritime Day 2018. And of course, if you have any questions, in terms of, maritime safety regulations or penalties, anything that you need clarified, you can get your, questions answered directly by the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Captain Philip Hill, and also MSF Manager Qualification and Licensing, Captain Tomasi Keta. So you can call us up on 322-0906. Captain Hill, just very interesting. We spoke about life jackets, and most people don't understand the purpose of life jackets in terms of their personal safety. We were talking about penalties and how it's compulsory for people to wear a life jacket when they're on a boat. When you do your inspections, how many of these small vessels are actually, carrying life jackets?
Okay, thank you. In order for a vessel to be registered, they first of all have to be surveyed, and under the survey requirements, they have to have life jackets even for the small boats. They have to have life jackets equivalent to the number of passengers and even the captain and his crew that's on board. So that is part of the requirement, and we have different type of life jackets. We have the sheltered water life jackets and the coastal life jackets. The sheltered waters one, those are used by boats that just travel along the coast, and coastal are the ones that go from island to island. And then we have the SOLAS life jacket, Safety of Life at Sea life jacket standard, that is put onto ships that go a further distance out of the coastal waters. The purpose of a life jacket, a lot of people, they don't understand that the life jacket is not there to just keep you afloat. The life jacket is there to save your life, and for small boats, we have been emphasizing that they wear the life jacket while on the small boats, especially the open boats, because when an accident, like I've said before, when an accident happens, it happens within a fraction of a second. You don't have a time to put on a life jacket, and life jacket have straps. While you're swimming in the water, you don't have the time to try and float yourself and put on your straps. So the other thing is, if you wearing your life jacket, if you knock your head or you fall unconscious and the boat flips over, the life jacket will be self-righting. It will right you up, and then your head and your nose is out of the water. So that's why we emphasize that the life jacket is there, because we want you to be safe and your life is protected out there.
Thank you, Captain Hill, for explaining the working principle of a life jacket, the buoyancy, because
Yes.
it's amazing when you read that it's something that's 10 times lighter than you, but it helps keep you above water. And I know to this is, one of the focus, something that you're driving as well as part of your awareness day is, small life jackets must be worn prior to departure and removal on arrival. But how many, Captain Hill, how many incidents out at sea, how many of these people actually had life jackets on when they were rescued or, well,
Okay.
if we were able to at all?
Right. Thank you, Gwen. With most of the accidents that we had, especially again the small boats, the passengers or the occupants on the boat did not wear life jackets. So they were just swimming along, and then they're looking for life jackets once the boat flipped. So if you're unconscious, then you cannot swim for your life jacket. We just had an latest incident in Gamer, where two boats collided, and all those occupants weren't wearing life jackets. Unfortunately, some of the ladies in the other boat had to be taken to Taveuni Hospital for treatment.
Sorry,
think
Captain Hill. There were because you said there were two boats that collided. There were no fatalities.
No fatalities, but there were some injuries. Fortunately, there were minor injuries. However, it's a scary thing that boats collide in open water, and you don't have a life jacket. If you are a strong swimmer, remember there will come a time when you can't swim. So it's always good to wear a life jacket.
And also, how important it is, for you to wear the appropriate size, especially to when you're dealing here with, little children.
Yes, good question. The children, they have their own life jacket. If you put an adult life jacket onto a child, most probably that his head will slip out of the life jacket because he has a smaller body portion, and the life jacket has a bigger opening, and he could even slip out of the life jacket, although he's strapped, and then the life jacket will be donned in a wrong way, where he probably be underwater and the life jacket floating on top, he or she, whatever the child. But these ships and boats, they also have life jacket for children.
Captain Hill, so we've touched on, when we in terms of safety rules and standards, we've touched on the load capacity, and also we well covered overloading, and also the life jacket. And there's something interesting you mentioned earlier too, when you look at passenger ships and safety of lives out at sea. I was just looking at the Fiji Bureau of Stats, the 2017 census. When you look at areas like the maritime areas that, they highly dependent on ships. If you look at Vanua Levu, Lau, Kandavu, and Lomaiviti, you're looking at a population size of over 160,000 people.
Yes.
Certain percentage will fly, but the majority will still travel by sea. So if there's other, safety rules and standards of passenger ships that you'd like to touch on?
Yes, apart from the life jacket, the bigger ship, they have to have life rafts on board. Those are other life-saving appliances that should be on board. And also they have pyrotechnics, which are what we call the flares. They have to have those flares also on board, and they should be valid for the time they're there. Most of these flares are they have three life. So these are checked by our surveyors to ensure that these things, that if it's on board, the life-saving appliances, they are valid, including the life rafts. They have a validity date. And every 12 months they are due for servicing, and this is part of the survey that we conduct on board.
Okay, well, after the break, one of the key focus areas in terms of awareness on World Maritime Safety Day is weather observation. We will touch on that when we come back. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. And of course, Captain Kete, you had raised something really interesting. So there is a brain drain in terms of skills when you're looking at the shipping sector and like seafarers and their expertise.
I think so. It's yes, Ms. Magon, but that is why seafaring is a bit different in terms of the rest of the training in Fiji. Seafaring is an international, has an international market, and that's where MCF comes in. We issue a certificate of competency that is recognized worldwide. So we can use our certificate of competency in any countries that has a memorandum of understanding with Fiji. So the majority of the world maritime nations, they accept Fiji certificates, as we can use our Fiji certificates along their shores and their coastal edges of their countries.
And so how you look, okay, we're looking there at, our seafarers working overseas, but also how are we looking at making this trade attractive for young people or people who are considering seafaring as a position? Maybe you want to touch a bit on the Maritime Academy.
Yeah, for the Fiji Maritime Academy, they have a prerequisite in place for their trainees, for the trainees that they trained. And that is that you need to pass Form 7 with maths and physics, English included. And but it's not now. It used to be during our time too when we came in. That was the prerequisite for. But at that time there was no Form 7. It was Form 6 then. That is if for a school leaver who intends to become a seafarer. And at the same time, they have an opening too for those who didn't reach that level, those who didn't pass that appropriate subjects at Form 7. They can also do their safety certificates, the basic 4 safety certificates, and come through the longer channel, which is the crew side. So they can become at the end of the 4 safety certificates, they can come to us at MSF and we'll issue them with a safety certificate and seafarer's record book. From then they will they can look for a ship and they get a ship. After 6 months, they can come back for a deck rating certificates. And from deck rating certificates, after 1 year, they can go to for able seafarer certificate. So from deck rating to able seafarer certificate, that is the market that is open internationally. So that is where most of our crew are heading to straight after that. So it's an open market.
Just very quickly, I know we're running out of time, but just very quickly, I'd like to ask you this. How many women are actually, considering a position as well as seafarers? I know there was someone who you had mentioned earlier that received a scholarship, that was awarded a scholarship, was returning home soon from a university overseas.
Yeah, there's not many women right now that are in the industry in Fiji. But we've got a few that have been highlighted in the past, that have went up to captain's position on board our local ships. Miss Shireen Lutuni, one of the latest ones, she's attending a bachelor's degree in nautical science at the Australian Maritime College. I think she will be the most, female officer that has a highest certificate of competency when she completed the programming. But it's interesting to have them on board. I was a master on the Boral guest on the guest tankers when we have Miss Lutuni as my third mate and later become a second mate on board.
Much respect to women going into that profession from someone like me just sitting in this cozy office. Okay, but just before we leave, maybe we could touch again on World Maritime Day and the activities that will be held next Thursday. This will be held at Sukuna Park?
Yes, Ms. Magun, and the World Maritime Day is on the 27th, as mentioned, and it'll be held at Sukuna Park. It'll start off with a march from the flea market to Sukuna Park. And at Sukuna Park, then we'll have the chief guest and ministers and respective VIPs that will be there with us to celebrate the occasion. As I mentioned, we want to make this as a celebration rather than something to be informing other people. We want to celebrate and acknowledge the shipping industry stakeholders. And we would acknowledge to the existence of those seafarers that have passed on, and we will be engaging some exercises and some of the emergency exercises that we carry out at sea during rescue coordinations, preparations, and all this. And they will be engaged with the Navy, the police, and the NDMO department. So the Fiji Maritime Academy will also be part, and likewise with the Fire Authority. So they will also be there as a part to this celebration, and it'll be good to invite our family members to come over and join us on the 27th at the schooner park on that particular day. It'll be very much a whole day celebration, even though we'll have a awards night at the end of the day. We will be having the awards night at the Fiji Maritime Academy, whereby we awarded the Seafarer of the Year. We are awarding that to two of our very senior staff who are out there at sea, and also a female Seafarer of the Year. And likewise with our Shipping Company of the Year. We are taking into account the theme of the World Maritime Day in terms from better future and better shipping, and also at the same time we will be awarding the Shipping Agency of the Year, the shipping agency that moves the most cargo in Fiji, and the shipping company that moves the most passengers in our Fiji waters.
Thank you so much, Captain Ket. There's still so much more to discuss, but time has caught up with us. And of course, all the best in your preparations for World Maritime Day 2018. And I want to thank you both again for appearing on Speak Your Mind, Captain Philip Hill and also Captain Thomas Siketa. And that's Speak Your Mind for another Tuesday. Until next Tuesday, you have a great week.